As I have already told you in the first stanza, the poet gives a detailed description of a few children in the class, and he begins with a tall girl that is present in the class with her head weighed down. She has bowed, bowed down her head, which shows the burden of the stressed life she leads. She is far from being lively and energetic. The tall girl's drooping head means her head was bent downwards, could signify exhaustion, fatigue. She is physically, mentally, and emotionally very tired. Why do you think her head is weighed down? Possibly because she is burdened by malnutrition, hunger, and emotional aspect of poverty. Here, her weighed down head symbolizes all her burden, her stress of poverty, and responsibility which she has. This clearly shows her sad and depressed life which she is leading. She is burdened by the miseries of poverty. She is exhausted and feels hopeless in her bleak existence. That is why the poet said that the tall girl with her head weighed down. The poet further talks about another boy whom he described as the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes, which is a metaphor used by the poet to describe the unfortunate boy who is so weak that he looks as thin as paper due to malnutrition. He has used this metaphor to compare the physical appearance of the boy to a paper. He is so thin, perhaps he has no food, no meal for days. He is totally malnourished, and famished means extremely hungry. With rat's eyes is also a metaphor because the poet is comparing the eyes of the boy with that of a rat. Just as a rat has eyes that are timid and scared, and rats are all the time searching for food, the rat's eyes provides us an indication of starvation and also highlights the desperate search for food. His rat's eyes depict hunger and restlessness. So the boy is weak and timid, and his eyes and his hungry eyes, like of a rat, is searching for food and security in life. The condition of the slum children are as miserable as that of a rat that live in the darkness of their burrows that are holes made by the rat. This paper seeming boy has no flesh on his body, and he look very thin like paper. Here's the picture that I have given just to give you an idea of how this boy looked like. So that is the meaning of the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes. Now, further moving on, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones reciting father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. Now, we come across yet another boy. Now, stunted. What does stunted mean? Stunted means impaired growth and development due to malnutrition. When this type of children live in a slum, they don't get proper nutrition, their body doesn't develop, so they were underdeveloped due to malnutrition. So we come across another boy who has stunted growth, means his body has not grown fully. Spender calls him an unlucky heir of twisted bones. The uses of the word heir is ironical because heir is someone who inherit property, wealth, and legacy from their parents. Now, why the poet has called him an unlucky heir? Because this poor boy is an unlucky heir because instead of inheriting wealth, he has inherited a genetic disorder from his father, and he is trapped in a physically challenged body. His body has not grown because of this disease. He has unfortunately inherited his father's Gnarled disease. Gnarled refers to rough and twisted bones that bent and distorted bodies. His body is also deformed because of the twisted bones which he has inherited from his father. He appears to be as sick as his parents. Now, why he is being referred as unlucky heir? Because his inheritance from his father was his disease, pain, and poverty, not any property or wealth. He is also unlucky because he has inherited not only the deformity but also poverty and despair from his parents. The poet says, reciting father's gnarled disease, this unfortunate boy, through his stunted body, is reciting or repeating his father's gnarled disease. Gnarled, I have already told you, that is twisted or rough bones, twisted and rough bones, bent and distorted bones. So this stunted boy is reciting his father's gnarled disease which he had inherited. He is reciting his father's physical deformity in his body. The boy is suffering from the same genetic disease of twisted bone as his father, and it is his lesson of reality which he is reciting from his desk. Now in the line, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk, in the line, a very interesting and new to you, very interesting and new literary device is used, that is jugma. Okay, now what is jugma? A jugma occurs when a writer uses a word in a sentence once while conveying two different meanings at the same time. Sometimes the word is literal in one part of the sentence but figurative in other times. Now here you see, since the verb reciting in the line applies to the gnarled disease and his lesson. So reciting in literal meaning, it can be you can say that he is reciting the lesson, but in figurative sense you can say he is reciting his father's gnarled disease. So that is why in this line, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his text, here the poet has used a literary device, that is jugma, when the writer use a single word that is reciting and it is conveying two different meaning. So moving on, at the back of the dim glass, one noted sweet and young. His eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game in tree room other than this. So while focusing on these children who are all steeped in deprivation, our attention is drawn to a sweet and young boy who dares to dream. He is a boy with a difference, and that is why perhaps the poet seems to be putting all his hope on the child. Now let us see how the poet has described this boy. The large child mentioned by the poet is the only child who still retains innocence of childhood in himself despite of his very unpromising surroundings. At the back of the dim class, here again dim class suggests that the basic amenities were lacking in the classroom. There was no proper light in the classroom, it was not well lit. But in that gloomy atmosphere, there is a sweet young boy at the back of the dim-lit classroom whom nobody had noticed. The word noted means unnoticed. The words sweet and young are in sharp contrast to the other children of the classroom. He is not like other children who has lost that energy that a child has at that age. This boy is different from the other children which the poet described in the first stanza. The other children whom the poet described as paper-seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease. But this boy is described as sweet and young. The other children in the classroom are scared, they have no hope and are malnourished. But this boy is described as sweet and young who dares to dream. Now, this child is able to dream. He can still daydream like a small child. The boy dreams of squirrel's game in the tree room. A tree room is a hollow in a tree where a squirrel makes it home. Now, the squirrel's game and tree room are symbols of childhood games, which stands for innocent and fun, and which is so typical of childhood. The boy is dreaming of childhood games on the branches of the tree. Though he is a part of the classroom, but due to dull and monotonous surrounding, he is less interested and his mind diverted from the classroom out to the squirrel's game. His, he dreams of nature, life, and energy. Squirrel's dream represent nature and life outside. Squirrel's game also symbolizes fun and freedom. In the last line, the words other than this means other than their dull and dim classroom, the boy yearns to play outside and longs for the freedom of movement and an escape from the dirty, dark, and dingy classroom. As a means of escape from this reality of miserable life, his mind thrives on his wild imagination. He does not want to be in this small room, which is dim, not properly light. He is He's lost in his imagination, creating his own fantasy world where he plays like a squirrel in his tree room in the open nature. He is not interested in the monotonous environment of the classroom. He would rather be out and play games than go through the dullness of this classroom. All this kind of superficial knowledge being imparted to them, something which they cannot relate to. His he rather prefer to be out and relate to the nature and learn something from nature. It also appears that this miserable atmosphere of the classroom has not touched him yet, and that is why he is able to escape from this gloomy atmosphere by virtue of his imagination. Physically he is in the class, but mentally he is gone, means his mind is somewhere else. So, in this poem, the boy symbolizes hope, who, despite the most abject poverty and most pathetic condition of his dilapidated classroom, is there to dream. In the first stanza, we can see a contrast between the eyes of the two boys. One has rat eyes, which is searching for food, and other has eyes which dreams about childhood games. There is also a difference between the openness of the tree room in the outside world, where the squirrels play, and the dim, gloomy atmosphere prevailing in the classroom. So, this is the explanation of the first stanza. The first stanza describes the condition of the children studying in an elementary school classroom. And if you notice, it's very different from children of the other school. Why? Because children going to other school are healthy, they are exuberant, they have a lot of energy in them, they have full of life, full of energy, and they want to have fun, and they have come with a great receptive nature. But here all that are missing, which is common in a school and school children, all that the slum children are deprived of. The first stanza focus was on certain children, and it's needless to say that these children do not necessarily belong to a part of the world. These children work as a symbol which can be from any part of the world. Now, the second stanza, the focus is on classroom, and we will discuss it in our next video.